Thank you, Ben. So, this community has long been exploring how information security and compliance objectives should be integrated into everyone's daily work. In fact, yesterday we heard from the team at Nationwide Insurance about how audit and technology teams can work differently to get radically improved outcomes. So, in parallel, another group of amazing and passionate people from this community have been attacking the problem from another angle and for nearly 8 years. And it has culminated in a novella called Investments Unlimited, which is being published later this year. Bill Bensing is a longtime scholar and theorist of what governance should look like, and will be teaching us about a concept that they're calling automated governance. Here's Bill.
Hey everybody, Bill Bensing here. I'm excited today to talk a bit about some of the automated governance. But first, before we get started, a bit of my Beyonce rule. If you like what you're seeing here, go ahead and tweet on it. If you have questions, let's tweet about it. If you think there's something here that's wrong, definitely tweet about it and let's talk. And if you just simply want a coffee and want to let everybody know, go ahead and tweet about it. So real quick, let me introduce myself real quick. I'm Bill Bensing, as stated before. A bit of my background is, coming up through the IT ranks and focused on how to help make software delivery and the capability to deliver software suitable for everybody, regardless of where they may be in an enterprise. And so look at the sort of democratizing the ability to deliver software. So that's by passion. And as we start thinking about moving this beyond into the next phases of DevOps, modern governance is really the term that seems to come to mind. And I'll have to admit, I've borrowed that from John Willis, and I'm continuing to use it. And so a bit of my driver here, as you'll see today, is really how can I help the world become its own software company? So imagine you're sitting there, you're at home, you're making pizza with your son. All of a sudden you get a call. It's your board member. Board member lets you know, board member, name's Bernard, says, hey, you got a problem. You got an MRIA come your way. You shrug. For the folks that don't know what an MRIA is, MRIA stands for matter requiring immediate attention. It's in highly regulated institutions, financial institutions, it's the number one signal from a regulator that you have a big, big problem. And that right there is an Investments Unlimited. What Investments Unlimited is a story about how we responded, or how an organization, a fictional organization, responds to this MRIA, this truly existential crisis. The funny thing is the crisis, to a large degree, was caused by themselves. They thought they had great DevOps processes. They thought they had some amazing stuff going on, but what they realized is, yeah, they had dev, they had ops, but they completely missed the boat on security and compliance. That right there is the real situation in industry today. And that's what this book's about. I can't really continue with this speech without giving much of homage to my team here. This is probably one of the best experiences I had. It came out of the opportunities last year. Was a DOS paper we were working on, and we wrote it in that vein. And this became an opportunity for it to become the book here, Investment Unlimited. But to give homage to everybody here, a lot of this here is like Helen DevOps Institute. Working with Jason Cox at Disney, Topo, I guess you think everybody's seen the S3 playlist from Jason and Topo's playlist recently that came on. Everybody knows who Topo Pals is. Topo's been great. Two big folks in here, John Rez and Mike from PNC. A lot of this book, and we'll cover it, they are significant in the experience of this book. And it was really fun to work with them and really see how they, some of the lessons they learned hands-on with this. Then we got Andre from VMware, of course, John Willis, and then last but not least, definitely Caleb. And Caleb's been great coming from KPMG. So as you'll see here, everybody came together, brought their experiences from all sides of the organization. As you'll see here, people are engaged in the organization in building software and running software. And some are engaged in other organizations, such as consultancies, helping other organizations. There's a lot of use of organizations there, but helping folks to do this better. So it is quite a comprehensive experience. But a bit about the book and where it came from. The book has actually been built upon thought leadership, starting back in 2015 here, and with those is going through this unlikely union and going all the way through the DevOps automated governance and eventually making itself into the Investments Unlimited. So what you're seeing here is this novel is an aggregation of this communal experience brought together and told in a way that makes it engaging, fun, and enjoyable. But one thing, again, remember, Investments Unlimited is an experience. It is a fictional story that does relay real world lessons. Let's focus on that real world lessons there. It is more than theory, and we'll talk a bit about some theory stuff today, but outside of theory, it is the collective experience, and it's collective experience from practice, and not just practice in general, but it is collective experience from successful practice. And so as we talk about the book, and we'll go into some additional topics today, what we want to talk through is understand, like, this isn't just us saying, hey, we think you should do this. This is what folks in folks in the authors have done in the real world to make these successful outcomes. So what we'll cover here quickly in the next 10 or so minutes is two key concepts. One, I want to talk about 3 aspects of modern governance, but then I want to pose maybe one unpopular opinion. So really, using the term modern governance, but what is modern governance? And modern governance is thinking differently. Automated governance, modern governance, where's this all coming from? What we want to do is we want to think differently. We want to move from this concept of implicit security and compliance models to explicit security and compliance. So going from this implicit to explicit codification. And to do this, you have 3 key aspects. And first, let's talk about the full experience. As with the presentation title, you have to remember that you're bringing everybody into the SDLC to make automated and modern governance happen. A great way to do this is through the DevOps automated governance reference architecture. What I love about this and the IORCAs, the inputs, outputs, risk controls, actors, and actions, is this is a great tool to sit an organization down and say, okay, what is our business architecture? How should we operate as a company? Take the tools out of it. How should we operate? How should we deliver software and make software delivery a business process? When you start to ask questions and approach it from this framework, what you start to realize, especially on the governance side, is the 2 types of toil that are out there. You have audit toil and then delivery toil. So let's dig a little deeper into those. What is audit toil? When you think about audit toil, it's really it's that high toil human process. It's the humans in the middle that are taking evidence and material, going through and saying, yes, this does or does not pass. It's the one example is I can give 2 different auditors the same controls and evidence, and they'll come back and give me 2 different audit outputs. And that right there itself is an example of how the toil manifests itself. But then we get to delivery toil. So delivery toil is really it's the ambiguity around the audit process. People don't understand the audit process. Yes, you have the toil in executing it, but what happens when somebody doesn't know what they need to do, doesn't know the controls, or doesn't understand what's being informed back to them by a governing body? That right there just causes a lot of time, unnecessary work and or rework, which hence gives you your 2 types of toils, the audit toil and delivery toil. Another key aspect of this is objective, not subjective. And as you saw, moving from implicit to explicit, objective to subjective, this is key here. To automate any type of governance, things not only have to be machine readable, but they have to be explicit. You have to be able to codify them. So I'll show you an example of what it looks like to codify here. But when I think of there's this concept called a governance contract, policy as code. But the idea here is if you can make it machine readable and machine executable, it can be automated. So you want to take concepts and things from the material, which you see here on the left-hand side, this little output is some unit tests, some Java unit tests. Taking that information and then serializing that into this governance contract, this codifiable, this machine readable format and capability, so then you can apply governance to it in an automated fashion. So what does it look like to apply governance to something like this governance contract? Well, you can see here, this is an example of OPA, Rigo with OPA. You can use whatever policy engine you may need, but the idea here is this governance contract defines the contract, that agreement of what needs to be analyzed for the policy. So regardless of whatever your tool, your underlying component or system may be that gives you the material, it is codified in such a way that it's a standard information approach for the organization. That way you can use tools such as OPA or whatnot to then evaluate this. Now, the purpose behind this is as you get to codifiable and you get this automated aspect, this is where you start to pull the humans out and redefine what the human's work is inside of the organization. Third one, black, red, green. Now, this is key. It's about observability. What's good, what's bad, but most importantly, what's known. So let's start with green. Green's pretty simple. talk about controls and compliance. These are the things that you have compliance and controls for, and you know you meet them. That's fairly simple. Next is red. Red, again, not, let's say it's simple. We'll say it as a simple too, but it's the controls you know you have to meet, but you aren't meeting them for some reason. Let's talk about black. Think about like a black hole. These are the unknown unknowns. This is the stuff that, do these controls apply? Have we applied a right control? What don't we know that we don't need to know? As we start thinking about moving into the automated and modern governance perspective, this is where we'll talk about the human power and the human resources. This is how it's reallocated. What you do is you want to reallocate people from being in the middle of just manually reviewing and that being part of that audit toil and that delivery toil to now being part of understanding how to close that black hole. And this is key in the automated and modern governance process, is taking the thought capability of the governance body and the governing organization itself and focus it on solving the problem of, are these the right controls? Do we have enough controls? Are these controls applied properly? Thinking through all of those instead of asking them to say, hey, check your email, read my Sonar Cube scan, for example, and tell me if I can go to production. As we go through this, I like to think of it from a unit testing perspective, red, green, refactor. But think about it, black, red, and green. You're looking at your controls, your unknowns, you're going from unknown to, okay, I don't meet it, but at the red stage, I just need to figure out how to then build the procedure or modify my software to meet this compliance, and then you get to green. This is really key. There's some data from some of the authors from a couple of the authors, they showed that over the course of this about 8 months to 12 months, just their unit testing went from something that was just very, very, very not well done to having a lot of green. And what they saw was the outcome of the quality and deployability of the software inside of their organization. So as you start thinking about the automated governance, yes, it's about applying governance, but it's also a way to establish what the norms of behavior are in your organization. So let's talk about some opinions here. I got an opinion for you if you want one. I know there's a lot that would be around here during the Enterprise Summit. And it's probably an unpopular opinion, but I'm going to go with it. Some people probably think it's unpopular. Repurposing your cab. Have you ever thought about just getting rid of your cab or repurposing your cab? I would argue with modern governance, this is key. What you want to do is you want to repurpose your cab to change your approval board. What you want to do is you want to make it work for you and prospectively not work against you. We know that these are there for a reason. They're not meant to work against, but sometimes it can feel like that. What if you took your cab and changed it into a modern governance platform team? So if you repurposed your cab and did this, what would something like this look like? Think about building an Onroad. What you would want to do is you want to focus on automating governance. You wouldn't try to get as much automated governance as there as possible, but you want to focus on automating for your software. So take your cab, your change approval board, and change the way it operates to focus on how you automate and build this on-road approach. Once you build that on-road approach, what you're going to notice is a lot of your investment happens up front to ensure you're getting your software ready and get it to a level of compliance that it can be automated. Because there's no secret. Once you start out with this, there are hurdles and there are obstacles that you start with that in tradition, and that most people in the organization just simply escalate until they get somebody to sign up on the risk. Here, what you're doing is you're forcing it to be confronted and as part of the on-road. Now, once you do this, you'll start to realize you can build out canonical implementations. Think about Pareto 80/20. You realize that, okay, as I automate governance, the software I'm building, most of it, not to say most of it on average, that's makes sense, but a lot of it can fit in these standard canonical implementations. So we have high reusability throughout the enterprise. And this is what it looks like to build the Onroad. So if you think about your change approval board, change it from sort of being let's put an obstacle in the middle, this perceived obstacle in the middle of getting to production, to really being a capability to facilitate the flow to production, to understand what is or isn't in compliance, but also to be the way the organization continuously increases their compliance and security stature over time. Even though you'll have this, one thing you realize is it most likely won't disappear in its entirety. Actually, I love Topol Kappa 1 example around this. And a lot of what we wrote in the book around this area was from Topol and some of the experiences from Mike and John at PNC. The thing about the off-road is manual. You will have manual evaluation. Now, you don't want to do this for everything, and it really should be the exception. What you'll notice is the costs itself occur as every time you have a CAP session. And now, why are we talking about the on-road? Or are we talking about the off-road when we just talked about this on-road and automating everything? The biggest problem is there is actually just some software that this may be appropriate for. Think about the rate of change around a piece of software. If you don't make a change on your piece of software for, say, 3 years at a time, do you really need to figure out how to automate it? Is the investment in that worthwhile to do all the upfront investments to automate? Or do you just incur the cost every 3 years when you make that one change to the manual cab? But at the end of the day, as you start thinking through this is sort of the on-road versus off-road, and how do you organizationally change to provide these platform team concepts and these internal type products? And you'll notice a big theme in the book is, one of the initial themes is, could you take this and make this an internal product? So no matter your road traveled, whether it's an on-road or an off-road, you always want to apply the same governance. Always apply the same governance. The governance posting the exact same standards. If you want to integrate these lessons, and we want you to integrate these lessons into your governance process. So that's sort of the call to action here. As we go through and you read the book, ask yourself, how do I go from cab to automated? Definitely read the book, check it out. I'll give you a little hint. I call it summoning your inner Michelle and Omar. And when you read the book, you'll know what I mean there. But it's been great sharing these lessons with you, and enjoy the summit.